So the polemic patch is finally here. I didn't think that it was going to be addressed as fast as they did. All they said when the director released the director letter, they said that they were working on the game's DLC difficulty and that they were going to be tweaking some stuff. Even though that we still have a easy, normal and regular hard difficulty mode on the game. So it's just a pretty standard patch. It's out right now, and it basically does what they said that it was going to do. When it comes to bug fixes, there's a couple of things specifically about some quests, like for example the fisherman quest that was bugged for a lot of people. If you go to the fisherman now and you have the updated game, it should be working in theory for you, so that's something to have in mind in here. But the major thing that we want to focus on in here is the major changes of the difficulty change and what is it that they did. Without having actual numbers, it's difficult to test what is it that they did. All I can say is that I can tell you about the experience that I had. One very good quality of life improvement, which I think that this should be like even done sooner. Basically, what you have in DLC on the Overture DLC is supposed to be endgame content for the base vanilla game. For the base game, it should be content with enemies that feel as difficult as, for example, as the enemies that you have after the attack on Hotel Krat, for example, in the regular base game. That's the level of power of enemies that you're supposed to be having. That's why you can only access DLC on base game once you reach Chapter 9. Now, for New Game Plus, you can access DLC on Chapter 5. There's some kind of reasoning behind this, and that reasoning is, and this is also something that a lot of people were not having into account when they were complaining about the difficulty on the New Game Plus DLC difficulty, is that on New Game Plus, you get more armor with heavier versions of the regular armor that you have on the base game. And this is something that applies for every single thing. The linings, the accessories, the conductors, everything that you use in New Game Plus is going to be heavier, meaning that you have to be investing more points into capacity to equip the heavier stuff so that then you can withstand the heavier damage that you're going to receive in New Game Plus. Which is why you should wait until you're at least level Chapter 5 on the game to access the New Game Plus, because you should at least have like some New Game Plus armor instead of just going to New Game Plus DLC with regular base armor, if that makes sense. So even then, I do still believe that it was not needed. Like, the overall thinking that people had when complaining about DLC difficulty, it was, yes, of course, on New Game Plus difficulty, but like, dude, that's the thing, like, that's how it works. If I can say, for example, I can give you an example, Dark Souls 3 right now. If you play Dark Souls 3, even on New Game Plus 3, we're not talking even about New Game Plus 7. If you fight Gale on New Game Plus 3, if you fight Midir on New Game Plus 3, they are going to one-shot you. And they have huge AoE attacks, like massive AoE attacks. The Ring Knights on DLC, they have massive AoE attacks and they're going to one-shot you, because that's the intention of New Game Plus. New Game Plus is not supposed, people are not supposed to go to New Game Plus to have the regular experience of the game. The New Game Plus is for you to suffer. The New Game Plus is for you to do like runs where you're going to get one shot. That's what New Game Plus is for. New Game Plus in Souls-likes is not like in regular RPGs that you get a beefed up character that can basically one-shot everything. No, when you go into New Game Plus, in these types of games, you go expecting to be one-shotted yourself, because these are Souls-likes, and that's the purpose. But anyways, they also adjusted some stats for certain field monsters the first playthrough of Lies of P Overture, meaning that, then again, when I say without having numbers and without having parameters in here, we have to base ourselves on just basic regular stuff. I can tell you that on my experience by playing the DLC and by playing the DLC right now with how the patch is, I do have to tell you that I might be biased because I've already been through the DLC for the builds that we have been posting here on the channel like 3 times at the very least. So I already know the monsters, I already know the patterns, I already know the jump scares, the places where you're going to have monsters behind walls, and I can tell you that on my first playthrough of the Overture DLC, I did feel that the DLC was even higher on difficulty than that of the base game. Like, you cannot get more powerful in DLC, your weapons can only get to +10 and +5, and even then I did feel that the monsters on DLC had more health bar than the endgame monsters have on the base version of the game, and I was fine with that. Like, I enjoyed that because it was just some extra challenge that is nice to have. The DLC is just more endgame content with very endgame enemies that are going to deal lots of damage, and you can have like amazing weapons against them. I do feel that they were harder to some extent than the regular basic enemies that you have in the base game. Now, after scheming through several areas on DLC on base game, I can say that I feel, at the very least, that the enemies feel somewhat as the base experience on the endgame enemies on the vanilla game. Now, having that into account, having that in mind, is that we don't have parameters. I can just be talking out of my ass in here, and that bias comes from me having to already have beaten DLC 3 times, and I already know the monsters, I already know the patterns, so maybe the first time that I thought that they were too difficult, it was just because I was not accustomed to them. I was accustomed to the base game enemies, I already knew the base game enemies like the palm of my hand, and now I'm just skimming through them because I know how they fight. They are not actually something that I'm not familiar with, and they are not that annoying to me as I thought before. As a matter of fact, there are some specific puppets on the end game, on the base vanilla game, like the puppet soldiers or the clowns on the base vanilla game on DLC, on the base game without the DLC, that I think that they are harder now than the enemies that you fight in here. But then again, like, that's subject to bias and things like that. What we can say is that the game got nerfed, and luckily enough, one thing that I appreciate, at least in the base game, it seems that they didn't touch at all the bosses. So you're always going to have the same difficulty for bosses when it comes to everything. So that's really appreciated. That's highly appreciated. Not that there's many bosses on the Liza P DLC, Overture DLC, but then again, at the very least, that's highly appreciated. Anyways, if you like the content, like and never super appreciated, and also that you're gorgeous and beautiful person, you're indeed a gorgeous and beautiful person, subscribe to the channel. Have a beautiful day, goodbye.